Well, well. The whispers have grown teeth. Look who they're finally talking about now. Not with their usual dismissive smirks, or their rehearsed indifference, but with something heavier, something real. This time, the air shifts when your name comes up. Their whispers carry weight. Their glances are full of calculation, and conversations pause the moment you enter the room because they finally figured it out. They finally understand what they're dealing with. Not just someone smart, not just someone clever or quick, someone dangerously intelligent. It's the kind of intelligence that doesn't announce itself with degrees, certificates, or LinkedIn updates. It sits quietly in the corner, processing, calculating, remembering everything, while pretending to notice nothing. And now they're afraid. Not the obvious kind of fear that makes people run or hide or avoid you, but the sophisticated fear of predators who just realize they've been hunting another predator. It's the kind of fear that makes them double check every word before speaking, replay old conversations, searching for hidden traps, and wonder what you really meant by that small, controlled smile. For years, they thought you were just another player in their little games. They mistook your silence for weakness, your observation for passivity, your patience for inability to act. They confused your restraint with incompetence, your kindness with naivety, your strategic withdrawal with defeat. Oh, how wrong they were, and how deeply they know it now. It started with small things, didn't it? Little moments where your mask slipped just enough for them to glimpse the machinery underneath. Maybe it was that one conversation where you casually revealed something they believed was secret. Maybe it was the way you solved a problem everyone had declared impossible. Not with effort, but with such elegant simplicity, it made them look foolish. Or maybe it was just a look, that fraction of a second, when your eyes said everything your mouth never would, where they didn't see anger, or hurt, or confusion, but complete and total understanding. That look said, I see through you, through your games, through your lies, and I'm choosing to let you continue, because watching you think you're winning is amusing. That's when the whispers began. Not the old ones about you being weird or trying too hard or thinking too much of yourself. Whispers taste different. They sound like, be careful around them. They know more than they let on. I think we underestimated them. Something about them makes me nervous. Because intelligence, real intelligence, the dangerous kind, doesn't need to advertise. It doesn't need to debate, argue, or prove itself right in every conversation. It simply observes. It catalogs. It connects dots that shouldn't even belong together. It sees patterns where others only see chaos. And most terrifyingly of all, it waits. It waits for the perfect moment to reveal exactly how much it knows. They're starting to notice the pattern now, aren't they? How you're always 3 steps ahead but pretend to be catching up. How problems seem to dissolve when you're around, yet you never claim the credit. How conversations shift when you speak. Not because you dominate them, but because you drop a single perfectly placed observation that reframes everything. You don't argue with fools anymore. Instead, you ask the right questions, the ones that make them argue with themselves later. You plant seeds of doubt in their certainties, not through confrontation, but with a curious innocence that makes them question if they ever knew anything at all. You've mastered the art of making people think your ideas were theirs, of leading from behind, of winning battles they didn't even know were being fought. And the part that truly terrifies them, they can't figure out your game, because everyone has a game. Everyone wants something. Everyone can be bought, broken, or bent. But you seem to be playing by different rules entirely. Or worse, no rules at all. You're not chasing money, status, approval, or revenge. You're after something they can't name, can't understand, can't defend against. It's as if you're conducting an orchestra they can't hear, moving pieces on a board they can't see, fighting a war they didn't even know had been declared. Every time they think they've cracked your angle, you reveal another layer, another dimension, another level of complexity that makes them realize they're not even playing the same sport. The gossip about you has evolved, transformed, mutated into something entirely new, where once they spoke of your quirks, your failures, your struggles, now they speak of your mind like it's a weapon they're not sure how to disarm. They've begun prefacing stories about you with warnings. Don't try to outsmart them. They remember everything. Be honest with them. They'll know if you're lying anyway. You become the person they consult when they need the truth. Not because you're kind, but because you're surgical. You cut through narratives and noise with a precision that leaves them breathless and slightly unsettled. You see connections they've missed, implications they've ignored, consequences they've refused to consider. You're the mirror that reflects not who they pretend to be, but who they actually are. And that reputation, that dangerous intelligence they whisper about, it isn't built on arrogance or showing off. It's built on results.
哎，秋里高，秋里高。
On being right when everyone said you were wrong. On predicting outcomes that seemed impossible, and then watching them unfold exactly as you foresaw. You navigate complex situations with an ease that makes them wonder what you're seeing that they don't. You solve their problems while making it appear as though they solve them themselves. They've begun to realize that every interaction with you is a chess match, where they can't even see half the pieces. Every conversation is layered with subtext they might not fully catch until days later, because your intelligence isn't just about knowing facts, it's about understanding systems, patterns, people, motivations, fears, and desires, and using that understanding with a precision that feels almost supernatural. But what truly unsettles them, the thing that makes them whisper the word dangerous, isn't just your ability, it's your silence. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say, but the silence of someone who's choosing not to say what they know. The silence that makes them wonder what cards you're holding, what information you've gathered, what plans are forming in that impossibly complex mind of yours. You've learned that intelligence isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most strategic. It's knowing when to reveal your knowledge and when to keep it hidden. When to correct someone and when to let them remain wrong. When to show your hand and when to fold a winning combination just to keep them guessing about what you really know. They've watched you sit through meetings where they're certain you have the answer, and yet you wait. You wait until the perfect moment, until someone is about to make a catastrophic mistake, or until your input will have maximum impact. You don't need to be the first to speak or the loudest voice. You've learned that timing isn't just everything. It's the thing that separates intelligent people from dangerously intelligent ones. And in that silence, they begin to imagine. They wonder what you're planning, what you're thinking, what you know about them that you're not saying. Your silence has become louder than their noise, more threatening than their threats, more powerful than their power plays. Because silence from someone dangerously intelligent isn't empty. It's full of possibilities they can't predict or prevent. And what they're only beginning to discover, the part that truly terrifies them, is that you don't just possess intelligence, you cultivate it. You've built an invisible network of information, observations, and connections that spans far further than they ever imagined. Not through spy games or manipulation, but through something far more sophisticated, genuine attention. While they were busy talking, you were listening. While they were performing, you were observing. While they were competing for attention, you were quietly taking notes. Mental notes filed away with perfect clarity, building a vast internal database of who said what, who did what, who's connected to whom, who's lying about what, and who's hiding which fears behind which facades. You remember the throwaway comment someone made 3 years ago that contradicts what they're saying now. You notice when a story shifts depending on the audience. You catch the micro expressions that reveal true feelings, the verbal patterns that signal deception, the subtle behavioral changes that betray hidden agendas. You become a living archive of everyone's inconsistencies, and they know it. But you don't use this information the way they would, as ammunition, blackmail, or power plays. You use it strategically, surgically, and sometimes even kindly. You redirect conversations away from someone's hidden insecurities. You solve problems quietly before they even become visible. You navigate social dynamics with an understanding that makes everything look effortless, natural, almost coincidental. The whispers about your intelligence have taken on an almost mystical quality because you understand something they're only beginning to grasp. Intelligence isn't just about processing information. It's about processing people. You've developed a psychological sophistication that turns every interaction into a three-dimensional chess game while they're still playing checkers. You know exactly which buttons to push, but more importantly, you know which ones not to push. You understand their triggers better than they do, their patterns better than they do, their blind spots better than they do. You could destroy them with a few well-placed observations, but you don't. That restraint, that deliberate choice, is what makes you dangerous. Because power isn't about what you do, it's about what you could do, but choose not to. You've mastered the art of letting people reveal themselves while revealing nothing. You ask questions that seem innocent, but are designed to expose truth. You create conversations where they end up telling you everything, while believing they've told you nothing at all. You've become a confessor who never asked for confessions, a therapist who never offered therapy, a judge who never declared court in session. People find themselves telling you things they've never told anyone, not because you push, but because you create space. And then, sometimes days later, they realize that while they were spilling their secrets, you shared none of yours. They know your thoughts on abstract concepts, but not your personal pain. They know your observations about the world, but not your private struggles. You've become both knowable and unknowable at once. The fear you've earned isn't the crude fear of violence or aggression. It's the sophisticated fear reserved for forces that move beyond conventional understanding. The kind astronomers must feel when they study black holes. They see the effects. They know it exists, but they can't quite grasp its true nature. You've become an intellectual event horizon, a point beyond which their understanding cannot travel. They fear your intelligence because it isn't confined to one domain. You're not just book smart or street smart or emotionally intelligent. You're all of it, seamlessly integrated into something they don't even have a word for. You can quote philosophy and catch street cons. You understand quantum physics and human psychology. You navigate corporate politics and creative expression with equal ease. You're not specialized, you're comprehensive. But what truly earns their fear is your adaptability. They've watched you walk into situations you knew nothing about, and within minutes, begin asking questions that strike at the heart of issues experts have been circling for years. You learn their languages, literal and figurative, faster than should be possible. You decode their systems, their hierarchies, their unwritten rules, and then you either follow them or break them. But always deliberately, always with full knowledge of the consequences. You quote V become ungovernable, not through rebellion, but through understanding. You know their rules better than they do, which means you know exactly how, when, and why to break them.
父亲使用这款由整形外科医生推荐。
You've turned their own systems into tools for your own purposes. You use their structures against them, their policies against them, their words against them, all while maintaining perfect, unshakable, plausible deniability. Listen to how the gossip about you has evolved. It used to sound like, did you hear what they did? Now it's, did you figure out what they meant? It used to be, they're so strange. Now it's, they're so strategic. It used to be, I don't get them. Now it's, I don't think we're supposed to get them. The narrative has shifted from dismissal to caution, from mockery to respect laced with unease. They warn new people about you now, but not the way they used to. Before it was, they're difficult, or they're intense. Now it's, be careful what you say around them. Don't try to lie to them. And if they ask you a question, there's a reason. Even if you won't understand it until later, you've become a force to be navigated carefully, like a sleeping dragon or an armed explosive. The smart ones have started seeking your approval, your input, your alliance. They've realized that having you as an enemy is dangerous, but having you as an unknown is even worse. They want to know where they stand with you, what you think of them, whether you're paying attention. Your attention has become currency. Your approval has become armor. Your alliance has become power. But even those who court you do so with care, understanding that you see through flattery, that you're immune to manipulation, that you value authenticity over everything else. They've learned that the only way to deal with someone of dangerous intelligence is with careful truth, because you'll spot lies faster than they can craft them. And what makes you truly dangerous isn't chaos, it's intelligent unpredictability. Just when they think they figured out your methodology, you change it. Just when they believe they understand your motivations, you reveal another dimension. Just when they feel safe in their assumptions about you, you shatter them with a move they never saw coming. You're not unpredictable in a wild or erratic way. You're unpredictable in a calculated way, which is infinitely more terrifying. You've learned to weaponize their expectations against them. You know what they expect from someone intelligent: arrogance, condescension, constant correction, and you give them none of it. You're humble when they expect pride, silent when they expect speeches, kind when they expect cruelty. And that contrast is exactly what unsettles them most. This constant reversal of expectations has become your greatest weapon. It keeps them perpetually off balance, never knowing where to place their footing, never certain what role they're playing in your unseen design. They spend hours trying to decode you, yet every conclusion they reach collapses the moment you move differently than they predicted. They've learned that whatever game they think you're playing, it's not the one that's actually unfolding, and that realization alone terrifies them. But occasionally, just enough to remind them of what you're capable of, you give them a glimpse. A devastating observation dropped casually into conversation, wrapped in a smile that makes it sting all the more. A problem resolved with such effortless elegance that their own efforts look staged, clumsy, almost embarrassing in comparison. A prediction delivered quietly that later plays out with such uncanny accuracy, it feels less like analysis and more like prophecy. These moments aren't accidents. They're carefully placed markers, strategic revelations designed to remind everyone around you that your silence, your patience, your restraint is not weakness. It is deliberate power. You've transformed intelligence into an art form, a canvas no one can see directly, but whose brushstrokes are felt everywhere. People know when you've done something. The air shifts, dynamics rearrange, outcomes tilt in unexpected directions. They can feel the ripple. They can witness the result, but they can never quite trace it back to you. That invisibility makes you the intellectual equivalent of dark matter, unseen, untouchable, yet undeniably influential, shaping everything without ever needing to leave fingerprints. The fear they once held for your intelligence has evolved into something more layered. It's no longer just intimidation, it's reverence. They've realized you carry the power to dismantle entire reputations with a single truth, to unravel elaborate strategies with one piercing observation, to collapse fragile egos with insight sharper than any blade. But you don't. You could, but you don't. You could, but you don't. And that choice, your refusal to abuse the vast arsenal you command, is what has earned you something far more rare than fear or admiration. It has earned you awe. They respect you because you are not reckless with your brilliance. You don't need to prove yourself at every turn. You don't correct every error. You don't waste time debating every flawed argument. You don't need to announce that you're the smartest in the room. Everyone already knows. Your intelligence is a sheathed sword, its presence undeniable, its sharpness unquestioned. And because you only draw it when absolutely necessary, the stories of those moments spread like wildfire. These stories have become myths passed from person to person, always retold with a certain weight. They speak of the time you solved the unsolvable, the time you answered the unanswerable, the time you revealed something no one thought could be known. Each retelling grows in size, but the irony is that the truth, the simple, unembellished truth, is always more extraordinary than the legend. Because real intelligence, the dangerous kind, doesn't require exaggeration. It simply is. And now they've begun to turn to you, not with trivial concerns, but with their most complex problems. The ones they can't solve with shortcuts, with money, with brute force. They come to you because they've realized that your intelligence isn't just mechanical calculation. It's layered with wisdom, sharpened by perspective, tempered by patience. You don't just solve problems, you dissolve them. You don't just hand out answers, you reframe the very questions they're asking, opening doors they didn't even know existed. You don't just think, you think about thinking. And that level of metacognition places you in a category all your own. But here's the weight they never see. Dangerous intelligence is not a gift without cost, it's a burden. They marvel at how clearly you understand them, but they never pause to ask who understands you. They rely on your ability to see through their games, but they never consider who can see through yours. They lean on you to untangle their messes, but they never wonder who untangles yours. They tell the stories, they spread the whispers, they build the mythology around you, but they leave out the part where it's lonely at the top of such perception. Because while they gossip about your mind, they don't mention the silence that follows you home. They don't talk about the exhaustion of carrying knowledge that others can't bear to hear. They don't acknowledge the weight of watching patterns unfold and knowing the outcome long before it arrives. They don't see that being dangerously intelligent often means being dangerously isolated. They fear you because they cannot understand you. They revere you because they cannot match you. And yet in their reverence, they forget that the sharpest minds often carry the heaviest shadows. The exhaustion of seeing everything, understanding everything, processing everything. It gnaws at you in ways they'll never understand. They imagine that your intelligence feels like a throne, a crown, a reward for effort. They picture it as a spotlight that illuminates your path, guiding you into effortless victories. But the reality is far heavier, far lonelier. Your intelligence isn't a throne. It's a burden strapped to your shoulders, a responsibility you never asked for, but can never set down. It is not a gift. It is a constant demand. Every interaction becomes a calculation. Not because you're scheming, but because you can't help it. You can't unsee the layers. While others exchange pleasantries, you hear subtext. While they speak in sentences, you hear contradictions, hidden agendas, and buried truths. What exhausts you isn't what you know. It's the effort of pretending you don't know. Every day is performance. Every conversation requires translation. You must dilute your insights into fragments others can digest, rationing out your brilliance in doses small enough not to choke them. You've become skilled at pretending not to see what you see, pretending not to know what you know, pretending that the truth isn't always sitting right in front of you. You live in a constant state of self-editing, not out of arrogance, not out of superiority, but out of mercy, out of kindness. Because truth in its rawest form is too sharp, too blinding, too unbearable for most people to handle. And here is the irony. The whispers about your dangerous intelligence never capture this side. They speak of you with awe, with caution, with fear, but they never mention the hollowness that comes with being right, when being right means nothing. They never speak of what it feels like to see a storm forming, to know exactly how it will break, and to be powerless to stop it. They don't understand the torment of predicting outcomes that play out with cruel precision, even when you try to warn them. They don't understand what it means to see problems so clearly that the solution itself becomes irrelevant. Because the root of it isn't logic, it's human nature. And human nature doesn't bend to intelligence. That's the paradox. You didn't become dangerous because you chose. You became dangerous because the kind of awareness you carry doesn't leave room for anything else. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unfeel what you understand. Knowledge has fused itself into you until it's no longer something you carry. It's something you are for. And that is why you frighten them. You're not dangerous because you crave control or dominance or revenge. You're dangerous because you're awake in a world built on sleep, because you're aware in a reality that rewards ignorance, because you're conscious inside a system that feeds on unconsciousness. This has placed you in a strange and nameless role in their social order. You don't sit at the top of their hierarchy, too visible, too exposed. You're not trapped at the bottom either, too valuable, too untouchable. Instead, you exist in a liminal space outside their categories, adjacent to power, but not bound by it, influential without needing authority, essential without being dependent. You're not a pawn on their board. You're the hand that occasionally moves the pieces. And they've learned painfully that you cannot be controlled. Not with money. You only take what you need. Not with status. You see through its hollowness, not with emotional manipulation. You recognize it before it ever reaches you. The levers they use to move everyone else don't work on you, and that terrifies them more than anything you've ever said. You've become the one variable they cannot account for, the one force they cannot predict, the one presence they cannot chart or calculate. To them you are like weather, too vast to control, too complex to fully predict, and too powerful to ignore. They never know if your silence means neutrality or preparation. They never know if your next move will steady the ground or collapse it. And it is that uncertainty, that gnawing realization that they will never fully understand you, that keeps them restless, cautious, endlessly whispering your name. And beneath it all, there is the weight that no one speaks of. The silent toll of carrying too much vision in a world that cannot bear it. Because to see everything is to know loneliness. To process everything is to live with unrelenting fatigue. And to understand everything is to carry the unbearable truth that no amount of intelligence can save people from themselves. Threats don't work on you. They never could. By the time someone formulates a threat, you've already mapped 17 different ways to dismantle it, disarm it, or simply make it irrelevant. They don't realize that for you, fear is a calculation, not a reaction. You've become socially untouchable, not by climbing ladders of power, not by currying favor, not by brute force, but through an intelligence so refined, so multidimensional, that it renders power itself obsolete.
终于让我等到这个空。
Well, the whispers have grown teeth. Look who they're finally talking about now. Not with their usual dismissive smirks, or their rehearsed indifference, but with something heavier, something real. This time, the air shifts when your name comes up. Their whispers carry weight. Their glances are full of calculation. And conversations pause,